Boog, what's going on, sir? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, man? Good to see you.
Hey, man, good to see you too, man. Thanks for coming on with me today on the rematch with Fly TV and BasketballNews.com. I appreciate you taking the time. Everything good with you?
Everything good, man. Anytime I told you, anytime you need me. I missed that first message, man. But, I
Oh, no, it's all good.
but anytime, man. Appreciate you having me on.
No, you just had me on your podcast, and it was a great discussion. Tell everybody a little bit about your podcast before we get started.
Yeah, Believe in Wizards podcast just started, right as the pandemic started. It was geared to talk about, the ins and outs of Wizard basketball and, how the team is performing and a little insight, kind of behind the scenes on how a professional basketball player looks at the game, for the fans in the area. So we've just been talking about different topics and the bubble and, our social injustices and things that are going on in the country and
Right.
about Wizards. So it's been a good experience.
That's good stuff, man. It was a great conversation. So I encourage everybody to check that out. So I want to talk to you about a lot of different things. There have been a lot of discussions about the basketball relationship between LeBron and Anthony Davis this season and how they are able to exist without jealousy or envy or, counting each other's touches or plays called for each other or stuff like that. They're just on the same, kind of level. And we've seen it work and we've seen it not work before. So we've seen situations like, Shaq and Kobe and, LeBron and Kyrie and KD and Westbrook. But we've also seen successful basketball relationships like you and Gilbert Arenas and Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars and Magic and Kareem and Bird and Mikal. There's plenty of good examples. But we've seen both. And I want to ask you, why did it work so well with you and Gilbert?
Well, I think for us and a lot of those other groups that you mentioned were, before the social media buzz and before, everything was about a like or a share or just allowing, so many people, in the business of what goes on. So that was kind of just opening up the space to everything that's happening with you. And it is about, about a relationship. It's about kind of that first, you never get a second chance to make a first impression sort of thing. So It was really about our first actual meeting, our first actual encounter. And I feel like I'm a good judge of character of person, just in my entire life. So when we met, there was an automatic connection of, okay, young dude, kind of wild, but genuinely he let off a good energy, and that's what kind of start to build our relationship.
So this is going back to Golden State. This is back for a while ago, and he was help me out. We met him like his first year or second year. What was it?
Yeah, no, I was already there. I had came in and played a season there in Golden State. And I was kind of a laid back, kind of a chill guy, and that's how I am. So when Gilbert was drafted, I guess they had already knew he was a wild boy. So when he was drafted, and I think he had got in contact with some of the staff. He had worked out there a few times before the draft, so he had made some relationships, and the team ended up drafting him. So, but they knew his story, and when he was drafted, he immediately went out and he basically just spent everything that he was going to make. So, you get your money from your agent or whatnot. That's kind of your little money to hold you off until, you get your first check, and that's how it rides. That's how it goes. Being a guy that Gilbert is, he spent all of his money. I mean, he spent it all in one shot. I mean, I know he bought an Escalade, like an aquarium, and he just went all out, and it was gone. So when I got to town, they were like, hey, you got to talk to this guy and you got to make sure this guy's all right. And again, like I said, it goes back to Golden State. So when we met, I knew what his story was. I knew what he was struggling with. He just got dropped with a bunch of money and he was trying to figure it out while, trying to make an NBA team because it wasn't anything that was guaranteed. So, we just connected at that level.
And so fast forward a little bit to the Wizards, because on the Wizards, y'all both were already established. Y'all both were already, you could say two alpha males. You could say, and that's in this comparison with LeBron and AD, people were kind of looking for reasons for it not to work. And LeBron came out recently and said, well, we're not jealous of each other. And he said, we're happy for each other and we're not counting each other's stats and counting each other's touches. And I didn't really see that with y'all at all. When we were teammates in DC, it seemed like y'all just kind of vibed off of each other on the court and had that connection on the court. Is that true?
That's really true. I really wanted him. I mean, I looked at him as a little brother. So I really wanted him to be successful because I knew where he came from. And it goes back to our relationship at Golden State. And I heard a story about Bron and AD when AD was talking about traveling to one of Bron's camps, from Chicago, and just that interaction. Mm-hmm. So now AD has this respect for Bron, and Bron obviously has brought a young kid in from Chicago. Now he's built that respect. So years later, they have a foundation of respect. A guy traveling in, competing at a camp, and then now today being one of the best players to play. So they have a foundation. And with me and Gilbert, it was a foundation. We had established a relationship. I was there before he got his big bag. What I'm saying? I was there when I was giving him bags of clothes to to make sure he was straight.
Right.
So once we got to DC, it's like I really want you to go. And then,
right.
But it takes I think having a solid foundation is really where where it's at. And however you build that, whether it's done in the summertime when you get drafted, however you build that foundation, helps you later on, when you get into the talk of the NBA and how all of the noise kind of creeps in.
So what's your interpretation of why it doesn't work so many times? I mean, we don't have to go through case by case, but there's been some cases where it's like, man, if they would have stayed together, of course, the first one is Shaq and Kobe, because they would have had the dynasty that, would have been amazing. But then you have to go with, Kyrie and LeBron, and that was one where I thought they had a good thing going, but obviously there was a lot of inside things that weren't working. And why do those situations happen?
I think it's the noise, the outside noise, whether it's from, again, like we talk about, just everything is there's a camera everywhere. So everything is dissected down to the T now. So, it's the noise of, the different camps. It's the noise of the different personalities that guys have. I mean, just being able to gel and being able to, really express themselves or express their feelings. Like if you have an issue with the guy at that moment, if you talk about it, it's better than, not talking about it and then waiting 15 games to now have a conversation. But by that time, there's really no going back and there's no repairing that relationship because how close an NBA locker room is. How much time we spend together, and to go, 15 games without addressing an issue, is a lifetime. So I think that's a lot of times that's what happens is guys, they don't address whatever the issue was. And I could tell GA, like, look, man, hey, you got to pass the ball. Like, look, Brendan was open, man, just throw the ball up. And he would be like, okay, he wouldn't take that as a negative slight on him not being able to do his job.
Right.
And I think it's really about the relationship and the personalities.
Does one have to play Batman and one have to play Robin, or can you have two Batmans?
I think you can have two Batmans, man. I think if we all are in go mode, like, and we're all saying that let's get it, like, people can place a label on whichever player, like the outside world. And that's, again, I'm talking about the noise.
Right.
You can't call AD and Bron. You can't say there's a Batman and there's a Robin because it just doesn't apply. But they're two of the stars on the team, but that just won't apply because the greatness that they have. I mean, you just can't put that sort of label on those guys. And it looks like to me that they're not accepting, that label. They're going out with what their team goals are. And I think that's what's making them rock and roll.
But in y'all situation, at least to me, being a teammate, it seemed as if Gilbert still deferred to you. And I remember when we played the Bulls in the playoffs, and in 2005, I believe it was 2005, and that was a good team. That was a good young team. They had a young Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry. That was when they were real young. Luol Deng, Kirk Heinrich. They had a good team. And I remember we went down there and we got smacked 2 games straight in Chicago. and it was ugly. You know what I mean? And so in the locker room, I remember Gilbert panicking. And I remember on the plane, Gilbert panicking. And you had this like calming effect on him. You're like, no, we're going to be all right. Make a few adjustments. Everything be all right. And he was like, oh, okay, all right, cool. You know what I mean? And it was just, I saw him literally go from panicking to being relaxed. And I didn't ever see anybody have that effect on Gilbert. You know, I played with him for many years. Like how was that connection with y'all that you had that calming effect where he would defer to you in a situation like that?
Man, it's the foundation that we built. Like, it's the foundation that we built. Like, I would make sure that he ate. Like, you know, because he was a guy, again, coming in on not guaranteed. So sometimes he would, you know, not eat so he could preserve his per diem, you know, on the road.
Oh.
In order to be as great as you need to be, you need to eat. Like, you need to have energy. So for me, like, he knows that, like, I'm going to make sure that he's good. So if we're talking about basketball terms and I say something, he automatically relates that to, L's not going to tell me something that just is going to hurt me or is not going to be for everybody. And that's the relationship that we have, because he knows that if he needed, you know, a coat on his back, or he needed a meal, like he needed somewhere to stay, like he knew that I was the place to go.
Right.
So you put that in the basketball sense, like he know I'm not going to steer him in the wrong direction.
You know, it's interesting. I remember that first game we came back from Chicago, and I remember I was having a good game in that first half, that first game back, and he wanted to keep going at Kirk Heinrich. Him and Kirk Heinrich was doing a little, you know what I mean? So he wanted to keep going, and you was like, hey, ET has a hot hand. Let's go on back to him. And you said it so calmly, and he was like, okay, all right, cool. And then, you know, but it was like Gilbert didn't do that. You know what I'm saying? It was just something completely different. And it was amazing seeing that connection that y'all had. And it's interesting. I was interviewing Coach Jordan, interviewed our old coach here on the Rematch. And he said something, and we both agreed with this. And I want to get your opinion. We both agreed that if you were there, that gun incident would have never happened. Now, that's just our personal opinion, you know, but what do you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, not on my watch. Not on my watch. That wouldn't have went down. That wouldn't have went down. Whatever the issue was, you know, it just wouldn't have went down. I mean, like you said, we've been in the heat of a battle of this discussion about anything, and I know for a fact that if I'm there, that doesn't happen, because we're going to have a conversation about it, and he's going to 98% of the time, you know, take in what I have to say, and that incident doesn't happen.
Yeah, and that's the, you know, because we've talked about this before, you know, I saw the difference when the Wizards didn't resign you and when you left, and it was, I think people undervalued your level of importance. When I say people, I mean Ernie Grunfeld. All right, let's be honest. So I'll say, let me rephrase that. I think Ernie Grunfeld didn't, you know, value your importance to the entire team, to Gilbert Arenas. I mean, because A. Poland wanted to sign you. Like, it was funny. Coach Jordan told the story of A. Poland, I guess, was in a surgery at that time afterwards, and it was during the free agency period. Have you heard this story?
I just heard this story and kind of the combinations and the lead up to this story. GA told it, but I ran into Eddie Jordan.
Okay.
The combine last year, and he told me parts of the story also.
Okay, so he laid it out to me when I interviewed him here on the Rematch, and he said he came out, and the first thing he said was, "Did we sign Larry?" That was the first thing he said when he came out of the surgery. Like, he wanted to, but Ernie Grunfeld, he gave you that low ball offer, and I was just like, and I think everything kind of changed. Like, y'all had this great chemistry, everything like that, and I shake my head at it sometimes. Like, yeah, he should have never left Washington. That's what I think.
Yeah, those are those times. You know, those are those times, and that's why when I watch now and I see how guys go through the process, and you know, as far as free agency and what they're doing, like I take value in that, because I know that those decisions are split decisions. They come down to very small things, and some of the things you value more then than you would value now.
Okay.
Like one of those big things is like when you're on a team, you're on a pretty good team, you start to build culture, and you've been there a couple years. Like you can't give that away unless you completely have to.
Right.
That's how that's what I've learned from that experience too.
But I don't fault you with that. I fault Ernie Grunfeld. That's
completely. They knew that I did not want to negotiate, and that's part of just me being me. If there's a fair value, what's out there. You guys know the business side. If there's a fair value, bring it on. I'm with it. Let's sign it. Let's do it.
Right.
You come below what the space is saying, then you got to know I'm gone.
Right.
You got to know. Just if you know me, you got to know that that's probably it. We're not going to have any more conversation.
And it wasn't even just a little bit below; it was a lot below. I was like, why would it's crazy. We don't have to spend too much time on that, but it was just unfortunate. You know what I mean? It was just terrible decision by Ernie Grunfeld all around. But let's switch gears a little bit. So then you went to Cleveland, and you were teammates with LeBron, and y'all played 3 or 4 years.
3 years.
3 years with him, and what was that like? What was the relationship with LeBron? He was a young LeBron then, but what was the relationship like?
Man, Bron was learning, man. He would, he wanted to play with me, and that was part of my decision of leaving Washington, because I knew how I could see what this guy was about to do, and I knew what I wanted to accomplish as well, and that was ultimately winning a championship. So coming in, like he had that glow. But for us being teammates, I think it was he was a guy that took a lot of time to listen to people and to have conversations, through all the guys within the locker room on the plane, because it was a veteran group, and a lot of guys were from different places. David Wesley, Scott Pollard, Hendo, all of these guys had different experiences. But what Bron did was he would go and he would have conversation and he would listen, and he brought to the table, it all matched up. So it was it was more of him taking in all of the information and then starting to apply it to the God-given talents that he had, and that's what made it a good connection.
All right, so compare your relationship, your basketball relationship with LeBron than with Gilbert. Was it a little bit different, or were there some similarities?
Yeah, it was different because we didn't have that foundation, right? We didn't have that foundation. That was the first time, really meeting LeBron is, the first time we got into the practice, the practice arena, the practice gym to play, the scrimmage. So the foundation wasn't, as tight. But he was a young kid. I mean, he was, coming in trying to figure out, how great he was actually going to be. And what I liked about Bron initially is that he listened to everybody. Like he would go around to, different teammates and, have a conversation about basketball. There's different guys, that's played, different years, and he would listen. And for me, that was big because he was taking all that in and then, putting it with the youth and all this, hoopla that, that he had coming in. He was merging the two of those together, and he was a good teammate. He was a good teammate.
That's what's up. And he was, and I got to keep remembering he was young then. That was young LeBron. So he was just really coming into his own. But you saw the dedication, and you saw like the being a student of the game. But he was learning then. Yeah. So that was the difference, right?
Yeah, but we knew that we were there to support what he could do. Right. We knew that he had the ability to play basketball at a high level. So we were there to support what he was doing. Right. And it was young LeBron. So he was trying to figure it out. Right. I was playing with Bron when he was, coming off the screen, shooting, 1 foot, 3-pointers, and, just we live and die with it.
Right.
Now he's matured and he understands the game and all the things that he's talked about now as far as those experiences early on. He's what he is now today, but man, you could see that, early on.
But what kept some of the veterans from not, wanting to yield, that power to somebody so young? Because that's what happens a lot of times on different teams. You have veterans that have been established, that have been doing things for a while, and then you have this young cat coming in, And they're like, well, he don't get all the shots now. What makes him? But what you never really heard that with LeBron on any of the teams that he was playing, especially with Cleveland. What kept that from happening?
I think conversation, man. I think conversation, right? We all wanna get out there and show what we can do. We all want to get out there. We want to, if it's our job to average 20, we all want to average 20.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, there's a pecking order in which things are done and how things are filtered and how the order of operations run, right? And you have to acknowledge that or understand that that's how things are going to be. You can still be great within that, within that function, because if you're at the professional level, if somebody's not going to give you something, then you're going to go out there and attempt to take it. So whether it's minutes or, shots, or whether it's, being on the defensive end, like, you have to figure that out as a professional player. But, don't mistake that, there's not a pecking order within, an NBA roster. Like, we know that there's a guy that comes first, and then things kind of filter down, and that's how, that's how you maneuver, but that's how you become successful as well, because everybody has to buy in. You don't necessarily have to like it, but you have to buy into that process of making whoever's supposed to shine and making sure that they shine bright.
But people don't always accept that, though. So what was different about LeBron that made people accept that?
I think he's had his battles. I think he's had his battles with, like you said, like you mentioned, like a Kyrie.
Right.
But for me, in our instance, like, we had older guys. Like, we had, like, Eric Snow, Ira Newville, David Wesley, Scott Pollard. Like, these are all the guys. Like, we look at those teams, and Big Z was there. Like, we look at those teams, and, like, there's not really a flamboyant ego. There's not really anything that's gonna, break the chain of what we're actually trying to do. Like, it's not going to get that bad where, we would have a complete issue, a complete blow up or meltdown because there's an issue with Bron, taking a few more shots than he would normally take, because half the time he was making the shots.
Right. It's interesting to compare, because then, say, going back to our Washington days, right? And when MJ was there.
Yeah.
And so MJ and Stackhouse, they didn't quite vibe the way that everybody thought, the way that they thought that they were going to. And you were there for that. What was your interpretation of why that happened, as opposed to, like, the year before when Rip was there, and Rip still got his points, still got his touches, but there was a different relationship with him and MJ. You know what I mean? So I'm comparing the different relationships of why certain duos don't work and why others do. And I
think it's just different personalities. I think I really do. I think it's different personalities. Coaching has something to do with that. I mean, we played, when MJ was there, we had Doug Collins, right?
Right.
Like, we knew that MJ brought Doug Collins in there so he could play for Doug Collins. Mm-hmm. And Doug Collins knew that MJ brought him there so he could coach how MJ wanted him to coach. So that was a problem, I think, with Stack and MJ. Okay. It was like Doug, because Stack is from that, the same area as MJ is from. I mean, Stack's from a small town where, you got to get it how you get it. And he's never going to back down. He's never going to take, what your answer to no to be. He's never going to take that and just ride with that. Right. So it was always a constant, butting of heads, because Stack respected MJ so much, but he couldn't talk through Doug because MJ brought Doug. So basically, Doug was going to shut everything that Stack wanted. If Stack wanted the ball on mid post, or Stack wanted to, like, he was shutting all of that down.
Right.
And for us, like, for me, I'm like, okay, it's MJ, like,
right,
whatever. I actually went to the bench because of that, but I was like, okay, MJ wanted a certain pass.
Right.
Cool, it's MJ.
Right.
But Stack wasn't like that. So it's about the personalities of what, which battles are you willing to fight.
That's a good point. And so you mentioned Doug Collins, and right now, we have a situation in the NBA where the number of black coaches are quickly diminishing. You played for Coach Jordan, And it's interesting. So even taking someone like Coach Jordan, I didn't think that he got the credit for achieving what he achieved in Washington. I mean, he got to the playoffs and we were there consistently, when before that it had been like 20 years. Like, it wasn't before since when Chris Webber and them was there. And it's interesting because it seems like sometimes there's a different barometer that black coaches have in the NBA than white coaches have. I mean, that's just what I see. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that has been true. I think that there's the opportunities have been limited for sure. I played for Eddie Jordan. I also played for Mike Brown, and I believe that both of those guys were coming as first time head coaches. And you're right, they don't get the credit that they deserve because, again, Washington started making a run to be in the playoffs, and Mike Brown was graced with the presence of LeBron James, so he gets a lot of that credit as far as to how that team went. But again, it's tough, man, because I see when you look at the NBA and you look at jobs, you look at the coaches, and you look at the how the turnover is every year, and the number of coaches that jump from one head coaching job to the other. Mm-hmm. It confuses me because if we're talking about these assistant coaches that are doing these amazing jobs, like, they should be first in line.
Right.
I would believe. But at the same time, if a black coach is fired, then is there a guarantee that the replacement would be a black assistant coach? So that's where I struggle with, the turnover of coaches, because now we just had Doc Rivers go from a head coaching job with T. Lue and Sam as assistants mm-hmm. to Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So yes, we still have a black coach in place, but again, it's about the recycling of the coaches that were already in place. So where do we and when do we find the new talent? So I'm a little conflicted on, if you think about it, from a black-white standpoint, mm-hmm. as opposed to what sort of opportunities are we really, giving these assistant coaches.
It's interesting because I see opportunities for some happening a lot more than I see for others. And I can't help but notice the racial difference in those hires. When you talk about, even with Mike Brown, I don't think that Mike Brown got the, respect of what he accomplished while he was with Cleveland. It was more thought, oh, well, he had LeBron. So it was really like LeBron's team. But I don't see that with white coaches of saying, oh, well, he had MJ and he had Pippen, or he had Kobe and Shaq. It's like the white coach gets the credit as being the mastermind, to be able to put all the pieces together. But I don't see that with black coaches. And it's interesting to me. I saw that, Byron Scott, who had a lot of success in New Jersey, had a good stint in LA, but he said that, he feels that black players should advocate for black coaches the way that Kobe advocated for him. What do you think about that statement?
I think it's about personality. Because, again, I'm not necessarily looking at the color of what that person looks like. Mm-hmm. It's the sort of conversation that we're having, how we're relating to each other. What's our basketball, understanding of each other? Because we're not living together, but we do have to respect each other, and we do have to service each other, right? Mm-hmm. You have to provide your knowledge, and I have to provide, my skill set. So I look at the two stars that were in Brooklyn, KD and Kyrie, right? Mm-hmm. And then, Steve Nash as one of our brothers, right? One of the guys that have mm-hmm. come through the league. I mean, we watched him play. We understand how great he is, but he's white. Mm-hmm. And those two stars really advocating for him to be their head coach. Mm-hmm. And that speaks to, does it really matter about the color of that coach's skin if we can have a working relationship with each other, we respect each other? That's the fine line that we've been fighting as a minority for as long as time has been around, and that's mm-hmm. that's the fight that we'll continue to fight, because, again, we can't have enough babies to be equal right, in numbers. We can't produce enough. So we'll
Right.
always be the minority. So I look at it as complete about, can I respect what this coach is saying, right? Because respect is what you do in front of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about plays. We're talking about, salary moves or decisions that you have to make, right? And then that slides to, if it's about color, then if we're talking about racism, which racism is everywhere, you can't get away from it. But those are things that are happening majority behind the scenes. So when I think about in the basketball space, because there's so many different faces, I really look at, the respect factor. And if they're able to have respect for Steve Nash, I mean, how can you fight that?
I agree. I agree with Steve Nash, and they had a good relationship in Golden State, him and KD, which led to a lot of them advocating. And it's interesting that the point that you made as far as having a relationship with the coaches and how that translates. And so what I've seen a lot is NBA teams, just about every NBA team has black assistant coaches somewhere on the staff, some black assistant coaches somewhere. And you see the black assistant coaches being the ones that are talking to the players one-on-one, that are in their ear, that are doing extra things. So you see that relationship, but then when you look at the number of head coaches right now, we're at what, 5 out of 30? Like that's a big drop off for there to be so many black assistant coaches. And just as far as in your experience, you've had a lot of different coaches, in your it's kind of hard to compare because Doug Collins was a little bit different because it was a weird situation. You know what I mean? It was just a weird situation. Like you said, he was there for MJ. And I remember one time Doug coming in trying to relate. I remember, you tell me if you remember this story. I remember him coming in. It was right after your video came out with Nelly, right? And he came into the locker room and he was trying hard to connect with you. So I'm sitting over here on the side on the trading table, and he's sitting there trying to sing along. Like he's like, I know this song, right? Nelly Kelly, right, right, Boogie? Like he, trying hard to relate. And everybody was just kind of looking at him, you know what I'm saying? Like with the stone face. And it just didn't feel genuine. It felt like it was forced and he was trying to, and it didn't seem like it was successful at all. As opposed to, like, I remember sometimes with Coach Jordan, he would pull you into the office and talk to you because he did that with everybody and just rap with you and just, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts? And it's just, now maybe it's just, that was just with them two in particular, but it was kind of like night and day as far as the connection and being able to relate for me personally. I just want to get your thoughts on that as well.
No, I think that's the beauty of sports and obviously our sport, but that's where the world is going today. It's trying to figure out how do we relate to each other and figure out, like you said, the assistant coaches are that bridge. They're
right.
that gap, right? They're going to talk our language, but then again, they're going to talk the other language, right? So now the coach can understand what that player is actually going through or actually feeling or actually trying to say, because there's a gap there. There's a bridge there. There's a translation that's made. Because again, when I was with Doug, I mean, he would always be like, "Are you okay?" Like he would be nervous because of just my, how I am and just
demeanor.
Just my demeanor is just like it would make him nervous. He didn't really know what I was thinking.
Right.
Now I realized that, but there is a buffer, on each team. And they're normally the black guy.
The black guy. But that comes across as fake to me. I remember with Doug, and then when they tried to send Milt Newton. Remember Milt? Mm-hmm. All right. They tried to send Milt Newton over to talk to me and relate to me, asking me about poetry and spoken word, asking me about being from the Caribbean. He had somebody from the Caribbean. And I'm sitting there looking at him like, because it's forced. It's not like natural. You know what I mean? So it was clear that they sent him there for that reason. Yeah. That don't work, Yeah.
But that's it, because now we've grown, and like the Players Association, like they know that to be true. So when you have the different programs that are set up, is to not be fake and phony with the people that are coming in to have the conversations. Like we have to relate and figure out, okay, if I'm going to have a conversation with each, like I'm not going to have the same sort of relatable things that I'm going to have with L as well. So I got to figure out what's going to say, what's going to get Etan to open up versus what's going to get, Larry to open up. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of, like you said, like not being fake. Like, Who can actually do that? It's normally like people that look like us, that swag like us, that know how to translate and know how to play both sides, right? It's not usually the white assistant coach because he can't necessarily play both sides.
Right.
But it is the black guy now because again, that's how we've grown up. That's been our culture. We've had to go from one side to the other side very quickly. Right. And if you can relate and be that guy, T. Lou, man. T. Lou's, he's one of those guys.
Yeah.
Right? He's one of those guys. He's one of those guys that went from being that connector to actually being able to lead those guys to a championship. Mm-hmm. That's why he should be next up, getting his shot and getting a long-term deal to be a head coach.
I agree. So then to your point, then it should be invaluable to have a coach that can relate to players. And that then makes me question even more why there aren't more black head coaches. You know what I mean? That goes back to my original point. There's 5 out of 30 right now in the league. And I'm scratching my head sometimes. I'm like, well, if they have this strategy to have black assistants to relate to the players because they've seen that it comes across a little bit better, a little better connection, and they, you know what I mean? But it doesn't translate to the head coaching spot. And that's the part where, I'm kind of puzzled by it. Like, why is that?
No, I think that's what you said. Like now, do we force players to put the pressure on, right? Do we have our sort of Rooney rule that we put into place that we make sure that, our guys are getting the fair opportunities, or is there a percentage that we have to meet every year? I mean, are there things that we can do that equal the playing field because they haven't been done in the past, and the numbers are only going down while the number of black assistant coaches are only going up, and it's the number of imprints, the number of times that these assistant coaches are mentioned. Mm-hmm. Is crazy that they're not in the next line to get that chance to be a head coaching job. It's not that they can do a great job as an assistant, like these guys can really lead.
Right. I agree. All right. I'm asking last question. Yeah. Ask about the current Wizards. You talk about them a lot on your podcast. What do you see? What do you see working out with John Wall? What do you see working out with Bradley Beal, with them connecting? I know John Wall had a little bump in this offseason, but he's looking to come back. How strong do you think that they're going to be able to come back, a healthy John Wall?
That's what you need. I mean, you need those guys healthy, especially John, because I think with having a two-pronged attack, really at that combo guard, that /1-2 spot. I mean, it's important in this day and game. I mean, the way those guys can spread the floor, attack the basket, and then if they get Bertans, which they need to re-sign him. I mean, he's a guy that can stretch the floor. Then they got to put active big guys that want to play defense, that want to close out, that want to be the connection from offense to defense, because Brad and John, they'll create enough offense. They just need some guys now to lock in on rebounding and rotations and, being a defensive presence.
So who do you think those others, Shaq always talks about the others that are important on the team. Who do you think those others can be on the Wizards team this coming up season?
You know what? They're young. I know you got Hachi. Obviously was a rookie this year. Got his season cut short. So you expect for him to come back, more polished and understand what role he's going to play. Whether he's going to be that wing guy or more of a 15 to 18 foot out guy. Mm-hmm. And then again, what's going on with free agency? I mean, we don't know where guys are going to move. I think that's going to be their best bet to have. Some veterans come in that, maybe are looking to transition into a different sort of deal, but have good talent, so they can start to build a good culture around, those guys that they're picking up. Thomas Bryant is also another guy who's shown to be pretty good and have some size. So we'll see what happens with him too.
All right, that's what's up. So what's next for you, man? What you got next on your plate?
Man, I'm enjoying the family life and doing basketball. I have an academy that I run here in St. Louis. Using technology to really advance the game, but also gamify the game for the young people that just want to come out and have fun with it. So it's tracking their stats. How they shoot the ball, how much time they spend on the court, their run, their jumps. What sort of arc that they're shooting at to make shots. So it's really helping them, in a training aspect of know what they need to work on. And right now we're just working with a number of different pro athletes, Bobby Jackson and CP3. Also have these types of academies that they're running as well. So just trying to, create a better brand of basketball, all while using, some technology to do it.
That's great. That's good stuff, man. Well, keep doing your thing, though. You know what I'm saying? You're doing a lot of great stuff. Oh, my wife told me to tell your wife to tell hi. Tell them hi. So,
I will.
Nicole and Carrie, they were close here in the locker room, so they had a good group.
I will, and I was definitely gonna mention to the wife that we were jumping on today to definitely tell your wife what's up.
Okay, that's what's up. That's well, stay safe down there, man, and keep doing your thing. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. You too, man. Hey, anytime, man.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, bless.